There are some running backs you should be targeting in trades in your fantasy league right now. Send some offers out there. These guys are great buy low players right now who can help your team. Whether you're undefeated or you don't even have a win, either way, they'll improve your roster. And we can start with the Cardinals running back James Conner, who he's coming off of a poor performance. After a nice start to the season, it's opening up a buy low opportunity on him. And it wasn't just a bad performance, it was like brutally bad. Look at this. You can see 10 touches for just 25 yards in this game, only catches one ball for the Cardinals in a game against the Detroit Lions where we were supposed to see a lot of overall points and fantasy points. We didn't get it. Just 3.5 fantasy points, as you can see right here from James Conner. But here's the thing. It was a bad spot for James Conner against the Lions. So far this season, they allow the 4th fewest rushing yards per game, and they are 4th in EPA per rush allowed, meaning expected points added. They just don't give it up on the ground. But the good news for Conner is, if you looked at the underlying data, which I did for you, you don't even have to, his role was still really strong. Because according to Fantasy Life, in week 3, Conner played 75% of the snaps. You can count maybe on one, maybe you have to use a couple extra fingers on your second hand, the amount of running backs that have 75% of the snaps or more in games this season. The rush attempts, he's seeing 56% of those, still strong majority of the rush attempts, and that's actually not even factoring out Kyler Murray's carries in this game. So if you're just looking at the backfield, it was over 60% for James Conner of the rush attempts. And maybe more importantly for me at least, is he ran 54% of the routes in this game, which when you compare it to his backup in Trey Benson, who saw 0%, the rookie, that's very encouraging. Now the one thing that does stand out is Amari DiMercato played 21% of the snaps, that's fine, but he did run 14% of the routes. And more specifically, if we scroll over here, he played 100%, which is like 5 snaps, of the 2-minute offense, which is not something we saw in previous weeks. James Conner was out there in the 2-minute offense. Now, maybe he was just a little bit banged up, or he just had a long run, or he just wasn't on the field, but it is usually a conscious decision by coaches to put somebody else out there in that 2-minute offense. And that would be my only concern coming out of this game. But again, 75% of the overall snaps for James Conner makes me fine overall if he's not going to see 4 or 5 snaps in the 2-minute offense. Now, most games that could lead to maybe a target or 2 in a check down opportunity, which again is valuable. So if Amari DiMercato continues to see that role, it's not great, but like I said, you're still getting a strong role, 60% of the carries, routes run leading the team still for these running backs in James Conner, and 75% of the snaps. We're not going to complain about that. And here's the thing, I think right now is your last opportunity to buy James Conner, because in week 4, he's going to get one of the best matchups, probably score 15 to 20 plus fantasy points, and then no one's going to want to trade him again. Because as you can see right here, heading into this week, he's a 5-point home favorite against the Washington Commanders. And the Commanders currently enter week 4 ranking 27th in tackling and allowing the 5th highest EPA per rush, efficiency per rush, that's expected points added per rush. They just give it up on the ground. So this is a strong spot to be buying Conner, not now, but right now. And then you should also be targeting this next running back. And that's Jordan Mason, who's not as much of a buy low as James Conner because he didn't have as bad of a game in week 3. And overall, his season performances have been really nice. But Jordan Mason this past week is coming off of a down week where he didn't find the end zone. And because of that, he didn't have one of these bigger overall 20 plus point days like a lot of running backs did. But like James Conner, the underlying usage remained great for Jordan Mason. 78% of the snaps, once again commanding the backfield snaps with Christian McCaffrey out. 70% of the rush attempts, you're not going to see a lot of guys have this type of volume right here. Saw all but 5 carries in this backfield, and 74% of the routes run. The knock on Jordan Mason through the first 2 weeks of the season was this guy's not even catching passes. Only 2 catches through 2 games. Yeah, because he's carrying the ball 24 times per game on the ground during that stretch. Of course, he can't catch it when he's carrying it. Now, in this game, we did kind of see a somewhat new development. Isaac Rendell played 10 snaps. He played some snaps last week, the rookie running back there, but he did earn 5 carries in this backfield. Again, 5 carries for him compared to 19 for Jordan Mason. It's not something I'm concerned about. Mason has looked good. I don't really think Isaac Rendell is going to be a big factor in this backfield. Maybe somebody in deeper leagues to add, because Jordan Mason is somebody that could end up, seeing 20 plus carries a game, getting nicked up, miss a game or 2. That's the only reason why I think Rendell's interesting, not that I think he's going to take touches away from Mason. Now, here's the thing. Mason's role is still great. 21 touches. He gets 88 yards. Like, it's nothing crazy. Still over 4 yards per touch, but only 10 fantasy points because, one, Juwan Jennings was scoring all the touchdowns here. Every time they got to the red zone, it was a red zone touchdown for Juwan Jennings, right? So Mason doesn't find the end zone, only ends up scoring and finishing with about 10 fantasy points. If you're in a half PPR league, he's probably going below 10 fantasy points. So it does open up this, for the first time in my opinion this season, a buy low window on Jordan Mason. Now, through 3 games this season, Mason has played the 2nd most running back snaps, only behind Saquon Barkley. And if we were to sort this right now by his rush attempts, he leads the NFL with 67 carries through 3 games. So the role is obviously fantastic. I'm not concerned by 1 week. Even though it was a good matchup against the Rams, I'm not concerned that he didn't find the end zone. If he finds the end zone and puts up 16, 17 points, nobody's talking about him as a potential buy low. I don't even think many people are talking about him as a potential buy low because he just doesn't really seem like that type of a guy, but I think the opportunity is there right now. Now, of course, the elephant in the room is this man right here, Christian McCaffrey, who will remain on IR for at least the next 2 games. And again, this is a situation where do we think McCaffrey is only going to miss these these next 2 games, the team has a week 9 bye. They could easily just hold him out until week 9. He comes back in week 10 because he is dealing with Achilles tendonitis, which is something that normally takes months to recover from. He just re-triggered it before week 1, and this is a 28-year-old running back that if he ends up tearing his Achilles before this, his season or his career really is over. And you can see my friend Sports MD Analysis on Twitter right here just kind of talks about Christian McCaffrey when he got put on IR. His pain is worsening, which means he could rupture his Achilles if he plays. This was right when he got put on IR, and he says he's a 28-year-old running back that would end his career. The problem is that at the 4-week mark, which is when he could come off IR, still doesn't guarantee that he's healed. And we just recently saw that he's seeing a specialist in Germany, so that also doesn't really give you the high hopes that he's going to come back in 4 weeks. I think we're not going to see McCaffrey until after the bye, week 10, maybe even later, until he's 100%. And even at that point, when Christian McCaffrey comes back, even if it is like week 7 or week 8 once he comes off IR, or week 10, whatever it is, I don't think he's going to be 100%. I don't think they're going to go and give Christian McCaffrey 20 plus touches a game when he's dealing with Achilles tendonitis just weeks before that, when they want that guy for the postseason, for maybe a final postseason run out of him, as again, he is 28 years old, and Jordan Mason right now is looking good. So why put anything or any more risk on McCaffrey? I think he's coming back week 10. I think even once he comes back, it's going to be a 50-50 backfield, which might seem crazy, but he's a 28-year-old running back with Achilles tendonitis. This is not just a sprained ankle. Go buy Jordan Mason right now because he's a 10.5-point home favorite against the New England Patriots. This one just screams 20 plus carries for Jordan Mason, 24 or so touches, probably a touchdown or 2 considering the fact that they're projected in this one to score 24 points, and the New England Patriots, we just saw them give up over 150 total yards and multiple touchdowns to the Jets running backs in week 3. Trade for Jordan Mason. Now you might be saying, who do I trade for Jordan Mason? Well, I actually built a tool, my rest of season rankings, to show you exactly where I rank everybody across all positions the rest of the season. This is the tool from last week. It was just updated and sent out to over 20,000 people for this week heading into week 4, and you can get it as well, the rest of season rankings, as well as a whole bunch of other tools in my fantasy blueprint. And here's the deal, it is risk-free for you, just you, the beautiful person. Because when you sign up through one of my 2 partners, like Underdog is one of them and then Better is the other, when you sign up through one of my 2 partners to get the blueprint, and there's simple steps that you follow on the page that will be linked down below, it becomes risk-free. And risk-free means it's a one-time payment of $10 through our partners, and if you don't make your fantasy playoffs for the entire month, you could use it the entire season. Every single day I'll be sending you tools. If you don't make your fantasy playoffs, I just give you back your $10, no questions asked. So if you want to join 20,000 other people who have my rest of season rankings, my waiver wire tiers to help you dominate the waivers each week, my player rankings and projections, my game-by-game notes so you can dominate your matchup, and a whole lot more. Oof, that's a lot of stuff. I'm out of breath. You can scan this QR code on the screen right here, or you can click the link in the description below, and then you get all those tools, and all you do is you just smack around. You just smack around your competition with them. Now, the next man I want to talk about who has 0 fantasy points this year because he hasn't played a game is Jonathan Brooks, and oh yes, I am buying low everywhere. I just sent out like 3 trades in 3 different leagues to try and buy low on Brooks where I don't have him in, because right now is the perfect time to buy him before he returns in probably week 5 from the PUP list, and he's getting 0 points still for the fantasy manager who has him. You can trade for him right now because the outlook just got a lot better for Jonathan Brooks. First off, the Panthers scored 36 points thanks to Andy Dalton. They scored on 7 of 11 of their drives, 64%, compared to scoring on just 12% of their drives the first 2 weeks of the season under Bryce Young. So the offense looks better. He's expected to come back in week 5, and if we pull up again my friend Sports MD Analysis on Twitter right here, he says the data favors a week 5 return at 85% efficiency but a 50% snap count. By week 9, he projects to be 90% and a full workload. That's fine. I'm completely fine trading for a guy and in week 5 being able to put him in my flex spot, and then by week 9, before the fantasy postseason, he could be dialed, ready to go for one of these end of season league winning performances. Now, of course, Chuba Hubbard's still in this backfield, and Chuba Hubbard is coming off of a monster performance, 21 rush attempts, 5 catches, so 26 total touches for over 170 total yards, 30 fantasy points. Obviously, if he's going to perform like this and heading into week 4 he has another nice matchup, he's not just going to be pushed aside once Jonathan Brooks comes back. I think Hubbard will be involved in this backfield until week 7, 8, or 9, and Brooks is a full go. Honestly, right now, if you could, I would trade straight up Chuba Hubbard off of that big performance for Jonathan Brooks. You might see another nice Chuba Hubbard performance in there next week or maybe in week 5 when Brooks comes back, and you might feel bad about it. But by the end of the season, my opinion, barring some sort of setback, which doesn't seem to be there, is that Jonathan Brooks, as of right now, and definitely by the end of the year, is ahead of Chuba Hubbard. And you can see that in my rest of season rankings tools. I would rather have Jonathan Brooks than Chuba Hubbard, and I think you can make that deal happen right now. Look, Hubbard's a quality back. This guy finished last year over the final 7 games of the season as a top 12 fantasy back, actually a top 10 fantasy back, back, and that was while playing behind a terrible offensive line through a terrible offense, and now he has a good offensive line. This has been a top 10, borderline top 5 unit, this offensive line, and the quarterback situation looks better. If Chuba Hubbard can do that last year, if Chuba Hubbard can be a top 10 back over the final 7 games in a bad offense, I think Jonathan Brooks, who in my opinion is a better pass catcher, is a better in between the tackles runner, is a better pass protector, I think he can have a similar performance to end the year. Now, if you're not familiar with Brooks, he was the 2nd round pick this past year that they traded up for in the NFL draft. You can see him if we scroll right here. You can see he went as the 46th overall pick in the 2nd round out of Texas. They traded not only their 2nd round pick, but also 2 additional 5th round picks, which just kind of gives you the idea that they knew that he was going to maybe be limited. That's some of the stuff that we got in the preseason. They figured he was going to be on the pup even when they drafted him. So this is not like a new injury or something that's a retweaking of that ACL. And just to pull up his college game logs where he finally got to be the starter last year, if you take out his first 2 games of the season, right? One against Alabama, a tough matchup. You take out those first 2 games and you just look at his final 8 games of the season, 164 rush yards, 106 rush yards, 218 yards, 129, 99, 98, 112, 104. This is not even counting his receiving yards. He was averaging 160 total yards per game the final 8 games of the season. Whoa, I think I just melted down right there. Spit it out, Sal. Guys, it's 4 a.m. Give me a break. But that dude was doing it as a receiver, lined up out wide, out of the backfield, as a running back, just putting up so many yards. The dude can do it all at 6 foot, 216 pounds. He does all those things, in my opinion, better than a Chuba Hubbard. Maybe the only thing he doesn't have is that NFL experience, but he's going to go right into a nice situation, at least right now, because Andy Dalton looked great in week 3. I don't think that's going to continue all year, but the offensive line looks solid. So I think this offense is going to go from league worst to closer to league average, and that's all you need for your running back to be productive in fantasy. Now, the next player you have to buy low on takes me to this situation and this quote right here. Mike McDaniel, the Dolphins head coach, on their quarterback Skylar Thompson's chest injury, the backup with Tua out. It was a rib injury that was pretty painful. We'll get a chance to look at him tomorrow. It did not look good when he went down. He did not return to the game, and it's a rib injury that looks painful. As of my recording, the status is not yet known, but it's not seeming likely that Skylar Thompson is going to play in week 4. If this is a potential lung thing, if this is a potential broken rib thing, he's probably not going to play for a couple of games. And that's not great because it opens up a situation where either Tim Boyle, who was arguably the worst quarterback to ever start a game last year in the NFL for the Jets, or Tyler Huntley, who's a better quarterback just in terms of his mobility and his past experience starting with the Ravens at times, but still not a great situation overall for this Dolphins offense. It's making the situation look very bleak right now in Miami, and anybody who has a fantasy manager who has a Dolphin player, Tyreek, Waddle, Devon Achane, they're probably worried, which is exactly why I'm coming in here and saying this is the perfect time to buy low on Devon Achane. And you're saying, oh, but the offense is in shambles. Yeah, the Panthers offense was in shambles last week, and we told you to go buy Deontay Johnson, and then he went for a career high. Now, I didn't make him go for a career high in receiving yards and have this great game, but that's the whole point of this. You buy low on players. And I would like to buy low on the guy who entered the week 26th or 2nd in the NFL with 26.3 fantasy points per game. And I know he was doing this with Tua. I get all of that, but he also has an elite role right now. Raheem Mostert is injured. Sure, he'll come back at some point, but Devon Achane is being used as like this wide receiver 2 for the team, as well as the RB1. That's great usage. And you can check it out right here. Even in week 3, this usage continued. 71% of the snaps, 65% of the rush attempts for Devon Achane. Again, I get it. Yes, you're going to see Raheem Mostert at some point this year. 67% of the routes run. And he's not only running these routes out of the backfield. No, more than half of these routes are either coming in the slot or out wide, where he's seen success not only in the preseason with a big catch and run, but also in this NFL regular season right now through 3 weeks. He's been catching multiple passes, 4 or 5 catches out of the slot already. But you might be able to buy low because the offensive situation looks bleak, and he's coming off of a game where he only had 8.8 fantasy points, although he did total 58 yards on 14 touches, continued to be efficient in my opinion, so things are still looking good. And here's the deal. Tua could come back in week 8. I know the concussion looked bad. I know everybody and their mother on Twitter wanted to say this guy has to retire, and I agree, it was really bad. But somebody with a bad concussion history, it's scary. But as of right now, he's on IR, and he hasn't said anything about retiring. There hasn't even been hints of it. So my guess would be, and the favorite right now in my opinion by like 70+% chance, if not higher, is that Tua plays after he comes off of IR in week 8. And that's just not my opinion. That's also a doctor who went to Harvard in Sports MD Analysis' opinion right here. He said Tua is on IR. His 2022 concussion took 4 weeks. Suspect a similar timeline here. So if Tua is going to come back in just a couple of weeks, and you have to eat crow for maybe the next 2 or 3 weeks with a bad quarterback situation where Achane can still produce during that time, it's not like he's just going to score 0 points. Well, if you can get by for those 2 or 3 weeks, even if he has a bad game, which again he might not, then you're going to get back to having Tua. You're going to get back to having Devon Achane, who was a number 2 running back in fantasy, 26 points per game game when Tua was healthy so far this season. That's somebody I want to buy low on right now because I think people are panicking. To me, he's still a borderline first-round pick in fantasy if we redrafted today, but people probably view him as like a fourth-round pick now because of this injury. Go buy low on Devon Achane. And I also think you can buy low on Josh Jacobs, who's been in this video all 3 weeks right now, but this is the first time that you can buy low on him because of what he just did this past week, and let's look at his performance. Jacobs only scored 5.8 fantasy points. He doesn't find the end zone. He ends up having 15 touches for just 48 yards against the Titans. It wasn't a great day, and it makes it even worse because his own teammate, Emmanuel Wilson, goes for 16.5 points. In the same matchup on 14 touches, just one less than Josh Jacobs, has 85 yards, scores a touchdown, looks highly efficient with multiple explosive runs of 10 plus yards in this game. So now you might be worrying, like, is this a split backfield? And if you were to look at the snaps, like, yeah, this kind of does. If we pull up PFF right here, we can pull up the snap counts from this game. Look at this right here. Josh Jacobs sees 33 snaps for Jacobs, 26 for Emmanuel Wilson, 10 routes run for Emmanuel Wilson, 11 for Josh Jacobs. So based on this game, this was a split backfield. But PFF also does a great job of breaking down that over the first quarter and a half or so, it was all clearly Josh Jacobs, and then Emmanuel Wilson started to get involved as the Packers were up by multiple scores. So I still do believe that this is Josh Jacobs' backfield. The guy who was great the first 2 weeks for them, the guy that they paid money. I don't think all of a sudden they're just letting Emmanuel Wilson back in, but this is Matt LaFleur, who does like to use multiple backs. I do think Emmanuel Wilson is going to see a lot of work this year. We talked about it in the running back ad video because Marshawn Lloyd's on short-term IR and AJ Dillon's out for the year. But I think you can expect Jacobs to start to see an even stronger role once Jordan Love's come back, and that makes sense because you'll see more red zone drives, and Love might be coming back as soon as this week in week 4. So more red zone drives. And the other thing is Malik Willis has been the starting quarterback. He's only thrown 14 and 19 times in his 2 starts, and he's a mobile quarterback. So when he's throwing the ball, he's not checking it down. He's taking off and running instead. So you're getting basically no passing game usage out of Jacobs and less red zone drives right now as the Packers are just eating clock running the ball for the most part these past 2 games. But let's just look at the overall season usage. Jacobs is still seeing 65% of the running back snaps and 21.7 opportunities per game. That ranks easily top 10 in both categories amongst running backs for fantasy. Now, honestly, I won't lie to you. The Packers are home favorites this week, but they face the Vikings, who currently have the #1 run defense in the NFL. #1 with a bullet. They just held J.K. Dobbins to 44 scoreless yards this past week. It's a sketchy matchup. It's a sketchy spot of the week, in my opinion, for Josh Jacobs. So you might be able to even hold out another week and then buy low even lower on Jacobs, but you run that risk of Jacobs going out there and having 60, 70, 80 plus yards and a touchdown because he's just been that good, and Love coming back could lead to more targets. So I'd recommend buying low on Josh Jacobs right now and not taking that gamble. And honestly, I'm buying high on this next guy. But before we get there, 67% of you are still not subscribed to this YouTube channel. What have you guys been doing? It takes 2 seconds. Look, if you're at this point in the video, you find it helpful. It takes literally 2 seconds to pause, scroll over, hit subscribe. If you're watching on your TV, I know it could be annoying. I get it too, as well as I watch YouTube on my TV and these other devices. But just hit that button. The gentleman's agreement here is if you find this helpful, you hit the subscribe button because it benefits me and this content benefits you. And that's kind of how we let this thing continue to happen. As you guys subscribe, more people see it, and we get to just keep doing this. So 67% of you, hit that subscribe button. Appreciate it, you all. Let's keep going. Now, that guy I want to buy high on is actually David Montgomery because his role is elite right now. And honestly, this is the role that we saw through the first 4 games last year. He was just seeing 20 plus touches a game, but then he got injured. And so far through 3 games this year, he's seen 45% of the snaps. Okay, we know Gibbs, he was a first round pick in fantasy. We know that he's going to see a lot of snaps, but 51% of the rush attempts, majority of the rush attempts in this backfield, 30% of the routes run as well, which is pretty interesting. So he's seeing an overall elite role. This has led to 19.3 opportunities per game as he still runs behind a borderline top 5 offensive line and a nice offense. And now he's coming off of a week where he goes over 100 rushing yards, 122 total yards, an insane 26 touches in this game against Arizona, a really good matchup against their defensive line, 24 fantasy points. And the big thing was he was able to have such a big day on the exact same game where Gibbs goes for over 100 total yards right here, has 16 fantasy points. So this is David Montgomery popping off as a top 10, top 5 running back on the week, even with Gibbs having over 100 yards in a good game. There's going to be games where Gibbs either doesn't play because of injury or isn't performing well, and in those games, you're going to see this become more consistent, these 20-plus point performances, if not higher. He'll easily be a top 10 running back, if not top 5, in the weeks where Gibbs has to miss for injury, which it probably is going to happen for at least 1 or 2 games this year. It just happens for all running backs. Because this dude is literally playing less than 50% of the snaps right now, and he's a top 10 running back in fantasy, and he's producing those 20-plus point weeks. I would assume if Gibbs does miss time, you're going to see 65, 75% of the snaps and just all the opportunities for one Montgomery. Through 3 weeks, he's currently the running back 9 in fantasy, ahead of guys like Jonathan Taylor. You know that hot start that J.K. Dobbins had? Ahead of guys like him. Hopefully you traded J.K. Dobbins away last week for somebody like a David Montgomery. This is where Montgomery currently ranks. His opportunity share is great at this point through right now 3 games. He ranks top 10 in running back opportunities, and it's translating to those fantasy points. And I don't think it's stopping anytime soon because why would it? This is what's working for this team. And the matchups are pretty favorable moving forward. Not the greatest matchup is against the Seahawks this week, but not terrible. Then he gets the Cowboys, who currently have the dead last ranked run run defense. They're terrible in run defense. Then he gets the Titans, who the Packers just ran all over. A Vikings matchup is tough. You can run on the Packers. You can run on the Texans. So 4 out of these next 6 matchups, maybe even 5 out of these next 6 are neutral to beneficial spots for Montgomery to see 16, 18, 20 plus touchdowns, and we know he's going to get red zone usage. Now, one quick hitter I want to talk about is Bijan Robinson, which might seem crazy that you can actually trade for this guy, but I see it happening right now. You can check on the Fantasy Calc database and you'll see trades every single day. People are panicking about Bijan Robinson. They're worried about Kirk Cousins in this offense off of a 13-point day where it was a tough matchup against the Chiefs, where they played from behind at times. So his 16 carries going for 31 yards, literally averaging less than 2 yards per carry, only having 52 total yards in the game in a primetime game where you need a Bijan Robinson to come through for you. He didn't, and now some people might be feeling some type of way, and you might be able to package a deal together for one Bijan Robinson. And if you can do that, you should do that immediately, because this role is still as good as it gets. 82% of the snaps, 64% of the backfield carries, 61% of the routes run. He is one of the 3 to 4 best running backs in fantasy right now, depending on how highly you rate somebody like James Cook. At this point, I think Bijan is in that top 3 with a bullet. And you can expect easier matchups moving forward, especially in week 4. Like earlier, we talked about a running back that you have to trade for before this week starts because it's going to be a great spot for him. I think you have to do the same with Bijan Robinson, because heading into week 4, he's going to be a 1.5 point home favorite against the Saints, who aren't a terrible defense by any means, but they did just give up over 150 yards on 21 touches to Saquon Barkley. Saquon was the running back number 1 on the week facing the Saints defense. I think Bijan maybe can't put up that type of production, although it's in his range of outcomes, but he could easily finish as a top 10 back. Right now, if there was ever a time to buy Bijan, it's literally right now. So these are the running backs that you should be buying. And if you want to see the wide receivers, once that video's out, it will hop up right here. But just in case it's not out yet, I'll put the waiver wire videos so you can make sure you can get anything that's left on your waivers, the valuable pieces. They're in this video, the running backs and the wide receivers. I'll see you all in the next one. Best of luck, everybody, this week. Enjoy your day. And hey, before you go, hit subscribe. Why not? Why not? Why not hit it? Honestly, why not? Hey, all right, peace.